Picture the most famous monster that ever lived, set down alive in the green heart of the modern Amazon. Tyrannosaurus rex. 9 tons of teeth and appetite, blinking awake under a canopy 66 million years younger than the last thing it ever saw. Almost everyone imagines the same next scene. The king takes the jungle, and nothing that breathes can stop him. I think that is exactly, completely wrong. Not because something out there could win a straight fight with a Tyrannosaurus, but because the world itself has quietly rewritten every rule the animal was built to win. What would actually kill it is so small, so ordinary, that a predator this complete would never even see it coming. The Amazon would not crown this animal. It would take it apart, slowly, and without ever raising a claw against it. Understanding why means meeting the real animal first, because the cartoon in your head is hiding the truth. A grown Tyrannosaurus weighed somewhere near 8 or 9 tons and stretched longer than a city bus, carrying a skull the size of a bathtub. Recent estimates put its bite among the heaviest ever measured on land, strong enough to crush bone like a dropped plate and swallow the splinters. Forget the clumsy, tail-dragging lizard of old movies. Think instead of a fast, sharp-eyed, hot-blooded engine of a creature, with forward-facing eyes that gave it real depth perception and a sense of smell, judging by the room reserved for it inside the skull, built for reading blood on the wind. Pound for pound, this may be the most perfectly tuned land predator the planet has ever assembled. That word tuned is the whole story, because a thing tuned to one world is mistuned for another. Tyrannosaurus did not evolve in a jungle. Its home was a long, thin, vanished continent that geologists call Laramidia, a strip of land that ran up the western edge of what is now North America, while a shallow sea split the continent down the middle. Warm floodplains and half-open woodland, rivers braiding across mudflats, loose stands of conifer and early flowering trees, long sight lines, room to run, legs, eyes, instincts. The entire business plan of the animal was drawn up for that country. Set it loose on those plains, and yes, it is a god. Trouble is, the Amazon is the precise opposite of Laramidia in nearly every way that counts, and we are about to walk through each of them in turn. Start with the trees, because the trees almost finish the story before it begins. A rainforest is not woodland with the volume turned up. Think of a closed cathedral of green, a roof of leaves so dense that barely a few % of the sunlight ever touches the floor. Down at the bottom, where a 9-ton animal is forced to live, the world becomes a maze. Trunks packed shoulder to shoulder, hanging vines as thick as your arm, buttress roots flaring out from the giants like the walls of a fort. This is architecture for the small and the climbing. A predator the length of a delivery truck, with a turning circle to match, does not slip through it like smoke. It shoulders through, snapping limbs, sloshing across black water, broadcasting its exact position to every living thing for a mile in each direction. Underfoot, the ground itself is an enemy the animal has never met. Laramidia handed the Tyrannosaurus firm floodplains to run on. The Amazon answers with blackwater rivers wider than highways, swamps that swallow a leg to the knee, and mud that turns one careless step into a trap. A 9-ton biped is a tower of muscle balanced on 2 legs, and a tower that slips in deep mud or a flooded channel has no real arms to catch itself with. Beneath the surface wait caimans, shaped by the very ages the king slept through. They have had all that time to learn these exact waters. The newcomer has had a day. Sound and smell betray it as well. A rainforest is a standing wall of noise. A million insects and frogs and birds layered over running water, and a flood of scent so saturated that a nose built to catch one thread of blood on an open plain is simply overwhelmed. Every signal the hunter was made to read still hangs in the air, buried now under a roar of new information the animal owns no filing system for. Half-blind is only the start of it. The king is also half-deaf to what matters and drowning in what does not. Now run the hunt in your mind and watch the king's single greatest gift crumble to nothing. Out on the open plains, a Tyrannosaurus could fix those forward eyes on a target, read the ground, and run its prey into exhaustion. Inside the rainforest, you cannot see 20 meters in any direction. Ambush, chase, the long, patient stalk, none of it functions when the trees smother both sight and sound. And when whatever you were stalking heard you coming 3 minutes ago and simply poured itself sideways into the green. The forest never lifts a finger against the animal. All it does is confiscate the one skill the hunter spent untold ages perfecting and hands it back, snapped in half. Hunting half-blind in a labyrinth is bad enough. Take away his power to cool down, and his situation slides from hard to fatal. Because here we collide with a piece of physics that secretly rules the fate of every giant the world has ever carried. The rule is plain. As a body grows larger, its volume swells far faster than its skin. So a huge animal carries very little surface for its mass, which makes it superb at trapping heat in and miserable at shedding it. In a cool climate, that is a blessing. Move the same body into a steaming equatorial forest, where the air sits near 30 degrees all day and the humidity is so heavy that panting barely works, and the blessing curdles into a drawn-out execution. Hour by grinding hour, it only gets worse. With no sweat glands, no easy valve for venting heat, no relief at all from a frame that hoards warmth merely by being colossal. A Tyrannosaurus generates heat it cannot dump fast enough with every step, every meal, every act of digestion. We catch a faint echo of the struggle in the biggest animals alive today. Elephants and rhinos spend the hot hours wallowing in mud and water, flapping enormous ears, working hard just to stay on the right side of a thin line. Our king has no ears to flap and 3 times the bulk of an elephant. The animal that once thrived across a temperate land would spend most of the rainforest day as a vast, overheating prisoner of its own size, hunting shade and cool water and finding no real mercy in either. Walk through its first real day, and the abstraction turns into something you can almost feel on your own skin. Dawn finds the animal stiff, ravenous, and already too warm. By mid-morning, the heat is a hand pressing down on every movement it makes. A flicker in the undergrowth tips it into a charge, and the charge dies in a snarl of vines and the white flash of a tapir already gone, leaving the hunter heaving, dizzy, hotter than before, and emptier. Afternoon drives it into the river to cool, where it lies for hours, bleeding away ground it cannot afford to lose. Night brings a thread of relief and still no food. Run that ledger forward a week, then a month, and the mightiest land hunter that has ever lived is not conquering anything at all. Instead, it winds down, like a magnificent clock that nobody alive remembers how to wind. Strangest of all, the animal would never grasp that it was losing. A Tyrannosaurus carried no instinct for caution, because in its own world, caution belonged to prey. It wades straight into the black water, shoulders past the thorns, bolts the tainted meat, and holds its ground against things it ought to flee, fearless to the very end. Because fearlessness was the winning move for an entire age, and is precisely the wrong move for an afternoon in this place. The confidence that crowned it king becomes one more accomplice in its undoing. Suppose we are generous, though, and let it endure the heat. Say it learns to move only in the cooler dark, until I sunk to the eyes in the river through the worst of the afternoon. Eating is still not optional, and this is where the trap snaps shut for good. Because the Amazon's pantry was stocked for animals a fraction of its size. A hunter that big demands prey to match. Across the Cretaceous floodplains, a Tyrannosaurus shared its range with plant eaters that ran to many tons, herds of horned and duck-billed giants heavy enough to be worth the killing. Nothing of the kind survives in the modern jungle. The largest land animal in the entire Amazon today is the tapir, a shy, pig-shaped browser that tops out around 250 kilograms. Beneath it, you tumble fast to capybaras, peccaries, brocket deer, the odd jaguar. Work the brutal arithmetic and the picture darkens. A warm-blooded hunter on that scale would burn through hundreds of kilograms of meat in a week, simply to keep that vast body idling. One adult tapir, supposing it could even be run down in the tangle, amounts to a few mouthfuls against that bill, and the chase would cost more fuel than the carcass ever pays back. Starvation, then, in the middle of what looks to our eyes like a paradise drowning in life. Meat fills the Amazon. It is merely wrapped in the wrong size, strewn through the wrong terrain, and guarded by the one currency the giant runs short of, which is energy itself. Worse, whatever little it did manage to kill, it could not keep. A carcass in the rainforest is a windfall that draws a crowd within minutes, from ants and beetles to fungi that liquefy flesh in the wet heat faster than anything that big could ever eat it. Our king would pour a fortune of energy into one rare kill, then lie back too hot and too spent to guard the prize, and watch the forest strip it from every side at once. In its own world, the Tyrannosaurus could hold a body against all comers. Here, even victory rots in front of it. Nothing in that forest is waiting for a king either. We love to imagine an empty throne and a new ruler striding in to claim it. But the Amazon is a closed economy. Every niche already filled, every scrap of energy already promised to something that fits. No vacancy sits open for a 9-ton carnivore. No idle stockpile of giant prey waits to be claimed. No role has been held in reserve for an age against the day a tyrant might return. The Tyrannosaurus does not walk in as the new ruler. It walks in as an intruder in a house with no spare rooms, and a house packed that tight has 100 unhurried ways to ease a stranger back out the door. A grim little irony hides behind that empty larder, and it deserves a moment of its own. The Americas did once keep giants on hand. Not dinosaurs, but ground sloths as big as cars, armored glyptodonts like living tanks, a whole heavyweight bestiary that survived right up until a geological eye blink ago. Then, somewhere near 12,000 years back, the great beasts of the New World collapsed in a single wave of extinction, and the forest never refilled their footprints. Arriving now, our Tyrannosaurus would step into the role of ultimate big game specialist in a world where the big game vanished 12,000 years ago. He is the perfect hunter for a herd that no longer exists anywhere on Earth. Here we reach the part I find genuinely chilling, because every killer so far has at least owned a shape. Forest, heat, missing prey. Those are enemies you can point a finger at. The one coming now cannot be pointed at because it is too small to see, and it is absolutely everywhere. Across the whole abyss of time since the last Tyrannosaurus shut its eyes, life never stopped evolving, and a staggering share of that change unfolded among the things invisible to us. Bacteria, fungi, viruses, parasites, every one of them locked in an endless, microscopic arms race with the bodies they ride and invade. Each animal breathing in the Amazon tonight carries a set of defenses forged in that war, drilled hard against threats that simply did not exist in the Cretaceous. The king carries an immune system tuned for a world that died an unfathomable span of ages ago. Consider what a rainforest really is from a germ's point of view. Nowhere on Earth offers a richer, warmer, wetter broth of living things, thick with flesh-digesting fungi and bacteria that bloom inside any open wound. When a jaguar takes a scratch, it shrugs the scratch off because 100,000 generations of its ancestors met those exact microbes and paid for the immunity in blood. Our king has paid for none of it. One deep cut from a fall, a thorn, or a thrashing prey animal, and the bacteria flooding that wound would meet flesh with no inherited memory of how to fight back. Sepsis, gangrene, fevers carrying no name and no defense behind them. Felled at last, the king goes down not to a rival with teeth, but to an infection working its relentless cunning in a body that never learned the new rules. You cannot bite what you cannot find, and what hunts the king now is already inside him. Bacteria are only the opening move. This forest grows fungi that infect insects, rewrite their behavior, and steer the living puppets toward a death that scatters more spores across the leaves. It breeds parasites with hooks and barbs and life cycles of nightmarish ingenuity. Worms and single-celled things that have spent eons mastering the art of slipping past a living host's guard. Not one of these tiny engineers ever met a dinosaur. None of them would need to. Recognizing a Tyrannosaurus is beside the point when a warm, wet, enormous body with an immune system from the wrong epoch is no fortress at all, just an open invitation, a whole continent of unguarded ground, the largest unclaimed meal any of them has stumbled upon in a very long while. The cruelest turn comes next. Evolution is the only force that ever solves a problem this deep, and evolution offers a lone animal nothing. It works on whole populations across thousands of generations, buying a slow gain in resistance with an ocean of individual deaths. Our Tyrannosaurus is one creature, alone, with no herd behind it, no descendants ahead, no time to spare. Whatever defenses it failed to inherit from a world long dead, it cannot learn now, because the only classroom the Amazon runs is the one where the tuition is paid in corpses, and there is exactly one of him to spend. The king does not get to adapt. He only gets to find out. Even the scenery, the part that looks like harmless background, has shifted under the animal's feet. Those are not the same plants. Back in the Tyrannosaurus's age, grasses were a bit player in the world, and the wide prairies we now take for granted had not yet spread across the continents at all. Most of the flowers and fruiting trees crowding the modern jungle belonged to families that rose and spread across the long ages after the dinosaurs were gone. Even the chemistry of the air has drifted, the balance of its gases nudged one way and another by all those ages of a restless planet remaking its own surface. No single one of these small differences would kill the animal on its own. Stacked together, though, they hand down one flat, unanswerable verdict. The king did not arrive late to the same party. He woke on what is, in every sense that matters, a different planet wearing the same blue sky. Almost nobody can hold the sheer size of that gap in the mind. The number is not really history. It is closer to geology. Pile up the whole of recorded human civilization, every empire and city and remembered name, and you have filled barely the final few thousand years of it. One thin sheet of paper resting on a stack taller than a tower. More time stands between the Tyrannosaurus and a modern tapir than stands between that tapir and creatures swimming in seas before there were flowers at all. We toss off the phrase the way we recite a phone number. The animal would feel every year of it. Nothing in this world is the one it left. Let me be straight about what this exercise actually is, because the honesty is the whole point of attempting it. Nobody can run the experiment for real. We will never know for certain how a Tyrannosaurus would have handled a tropical fever, for the plain reason that no one has ever taken a dinosaur's temperature or watched one battle an infection. Yet what we can do is real science all the same. Reading the bones, weighing the body, measuring how living giants wrestle with heat, studying in pitiless detail how the Amazon treats every creature that steps inside it. Every separate line of evidence points to one destination. This is not a fantasy spun from nothing. We are following the physiology and the ecology and the deep history at once. And all three open onto the same plain, unglamorous door. I suspect we get this so badly wrong because we have watched the king win too many times on a screen. The films turn a Tyrannosaurus loose in a manicured park or a modern downtown. Settings that are really just open ground poured in concrete, the precise country the animal was made for, and naturally it dominates. Set it somewhere wholly alien instead, somewhere governed by heat and rot and crowding and the sheer weight of elapsed time, and the spell snaps. This monster was never invincible. It was only ever invincible at home, inside the single world that no longer exists anywhere but in stone. Behind that door waits the thought I keep circling. We love to tell the Tyrannosaurus as a story about raw power, about the biggest jaws and the heaviest bite, as though being the most terrifying animal of your own age buys you anything whatsoever in someone else's. It buys nothing. The fiercest predator the old world ever built means nothing to a place that walked away from the Cretaceous game an immensely long time ago. It took up a different game, with different players and 1,000 fresh ways to die. And nobody ever thought to hand the old champion the new rulebook. The Tyrannosaurus was never weak. Measured against its own age, it came as close to unstoppable as living flesh has ever managed. And this is the humbling part. None of that strength survives the crossing of deep time, because strength is never strength in the abstract. It is always strength at something, against something, inside one particular world. Change the world far enough and the mightiest thing in it slides from marvel to curiosity to liability to corpse, without a single one of its muscles growing any weaker. The king is undone by no flaw in the animal at all. He is undone by nothing more dramatic than the slow passage of enough years. So the deadliest thing in that whole jungle was never the jaguar or the snake or the fever burning in its blood. It was the calendar. A Tyrannosaurus in the Amazon is a flawless machine, wound tight and ready for a world gone so long that even the air has forgotten it. Drop the greatest hunter the planet ever made into the wrong 66 million years, and it does not wake a god. It wakes a ghost. The one rival the king could never outfight, never outrun, and never sink a single tooth into was the quiet, patient thing that had already beaten it long before it ever opened its eyes: time itself.